Am I the asshole for bringing my crying baby on a plane? Am I the asshole? This happened 2 years ago when my daughter was just 9 months old. I'm Australian but I live in the UK. I went back to Australia to visit my family and introduce my daughter to some elderly relatives who couldn't make the trip anymore. Obviously I knew that flying with a 9-month-old would not be easy, so I prepped as well as I could. I packed her favorite teddy, brought books and some toys for bringing my crying baby on a plane. On the plane I sat next to an older couple. They gave me the stink eye as soon as I sat down. During takeoff my baby cried. They sighed. A bit later she cried again. The woman next to me asked me to shush my baby. I told her I was doing my best. At some point I needed to pee, so I asked a flight attendant if she could hold my baby. She told me I could do that when I was boarding. The guy sitting next to me told me I shouldn't be flying if I can't take care of my baby by myself. It went on and on with their complaints. Then the woman told me that the decent thing to do would have been to bring earplugs for the other passengers and that next time maybe I shouldn't fly with a baby since it's disrupting everyone's experience. At this point I was fed up. I told her that they should have brought their own earplugs since I'm not the first woman to fly with a baby, so it could have been anticipated. And that my baby was a child therefore couldn't control herself, whereas they were grown adults who should know how to behave themselves. The guy behind us must have heard because he leaned forward and told me that it is generally considered rude or disrespectful to fly with a baby. I told him flying is a form of public transportation and if he wants to control his surroundings he should have chosen a private jet. I was quite upset at the time, probably because I knew I was the hated one on the plane. I still think about it sometimes and I decided to settle it now. AITA for bringing a baby on a plane. NTA. Sometimes people with babies need to fly. Sometimes babies cry. Such is life. As long as the parent is doing their best to keep their baby quiet I take no issue with them. If you had ignored your kid completely and popped on your own noise cancelling earphones then you'd be an R. But you were trying to keep her quiet and these people gave you the stink eye from the off. Even when she was quiet. They were never going to be happy and a couple of pairs of earplugs would not have changed it. The guy behind us must have heard because he leaned forward and told me that it is generally considered rude or disrespectful to fly with a baby. I've been on flights that have actual cots for babies, so that is bullshit. The airlines actually support you doing it. NTA. While it's annoying to listen to a crying baby on an airplane, people need to understand it's even worse for the parents who have to deal with said crying baby. It is absolutely not rude to fly with an infant. The people around you could be kind and helpful instead of being judgmental and dickish. Absolutely NTA. The nerve of the man behind you to insert himself into your conversation. What if you had a family emergency and had no choice but to fly home? Also, it's not illegal to fly with an infant. You had the most excellent point of all, though. The 3 adults were acting exactly like your 9-month-old, if not worse. I'd rather sit next to you and your kid any day than those R's. I mean, I wouldn't lol. If I was sitting in my seat so low they would just be sitting in their own minding their own business. I would take that over sitting next to a crying baby any day of the week haha. NTA. Solo parent on an international flight. Cut the poor woman some slack. People like the old couple are the worst. They like to act as if there is a magic shut up button on every baby that you can push to get them to stop crying, but the parent just won't do it because they are trying to make their day horrible. No one likes a crying baby on a plane, but it's not like the parents want that to happen either. You just have to get over it. If you aren't bringing headphones or earplugs on a commercial flight, then that's on you. Also, when you fly on public transportation, you are gonna have to encounter, the public, including babies. It's weird, right? Now, I will be honest. I hate crying babies on planes. But as someone who flies at least once a year and plans on having kids one day, I realize I will very likely be that person one day. I don't blame the people around you for being annoyed, but I'm surprised they would actually give you a hard time about it. Babies cry, that's a given. But you're definitely not telling the whole story. You've made it pretty clear that the couple beside you complained, not just once and that it went on and on. Even the guy behind you had something to say about your crying baby. As much as some people hate crying babies, most have very little to say, unless it's prolonged and loud. I suspect that very likely AITA, since Zhao still looking for validation 2 years later. AITA. There wasn't a surprise change of plans that forced you to travel with the child. This trip wasn't even necessary for you. For all the same reasons I can't blast Slayer in my backyard at 1 AM or drive my car without a muffler, you shouldn't bring a screaming child on a plane. Crap like this is why I wish we still had smoking sections. Esh. Your baby was probably crying because her ears hurt. At that age, kids can't regulate the pressure in their ear canals, so it builds up quite painfully. Frankly, I consider any parent who flies with such a young child for a non-emergency reason to be tar. They're choosing to cause their child pain for a significant period of time, and obviously that child will cry as a result, which is awful for the whole plane. However, the couple was unnecessarily rude when they spoke up to criticize you. Making an unhappy face is a fair response to you subjecting them to an inevitably uncomfortable flight, but they shouldn't have commented. And their criticism about how you shouldn't need help was pure BS. The attendant had offered, and it wasn't as if you were imposing on them to help, which would have been rude, and you would have needed help with an older child too, because toddlers still shouldn't be left alone. The same goes for the random passenger. He could have brought his own earplugs, and who really should have minded his business. He made the situation worse for no reason. Crying babies in general are horrible, and crying babies on planes are a level of torture that makes me fantasize about throwing them out the window. Of course people were irritated by a screaming, crying source of irritation, but they didn't have to be absolute jerks about it to you, and they could have brought their own earplugs to block out any and all obnoxious noises. AITA. You should think about others on long-haul flights like that one. You're used to your kids crying, but to others it's like nails on a chalkboard. If people were commenting about earplugs, I highly doubt your kid was crying sporadically. AITA. Don't bring a 9-month-old on a plane just to visit family. If you fly with a child under 2, you need a much better reason. A 9-month-old will not remember the trip. Your family was not dying. They can watch videos with ease. Assuming you cannot be separated from your child for the duration of the trip, don't go. Your choice is inconsiderate of others. Public transportation is not like a plane, because people are forced to be in a confined space for several hours. For my own sanity, I assume every child on my flight needs to be on that flight. I come prepared for them, and people like you. What you did may be legal, but very inconsiderate. You paint a bad picture for every baby that needs to fly more than yours did. NTA. The crying may be related to air pain due to pressure changes during takeoff. So if you can encourage swallowing, it might help. I don't like sitting near a crying baby either, but you're right, it's public transportation, and if you have to get somewhere, you go, baby in tow. If it's rude to bring a crying baby on a flight, it's even ruder to try to shame the baby's parent. BTW. Op. You need to correct a typo. I wondered when you were boring, but suspect you meant boarding. Close bracket. Many, 28 plus, years ago, I had a very long day of flying alone with a crying 9-month-old. Later learned he had an ear infection. Ouch. Many of the fellow passengers were giving me the stink eye or asking to be moved. They couldn't as it was a full flight. I was in tears trying to comfort my son, feed him, walk him down the aisle, anything. To ladies, both senior citizens, moved seats with their third friend. They asked the attendant to invite me to sit in the row with them. They spent 4 hours passing my baby, cooing, walking, snuggling. I don't remember their names. I so wish I did. I will never ever forget their act of kindness. When we landed and deplaned, I hugged them both, hard and long. My family who were greeting us and meeting my son for the first time, hugged and thanked them too. UWNTA opus. This happens. NTA. I'll be honest, I detest being on a plane with a baby. If I can't upgrade, I'll sit right at the back of the plane, as most people don't want to drag a baby back there, and it's away from the bulkhead seats that have space for cots. I'd pay extra to go on a no babies allowed flight. However, babies are allowed to be on the plane. Everyone knows this. It's a risk. If noise is a problem, Bring a pair of earplugs and decent noise cancelling headphones. My last long haul flight, I could have had a demon child from hell screaming next to me and wouldn't have heard a thing due to the combination of earplugs and my Bose headphones. Providing that you weren't just leaving the baby to cry, you were doing your best. I'm a flight attendant who doesn't really care for children. They're okay. I just don't like loud people with poor manners in general. And let me assure you as strongly as I can that you are not the asshole. You are exactly right. Commercial airlines are public transportation. Sure, it sucks being stuck on a metal tube with strangers, but it isn't like anyone doesn't know what's about to happen. If you don't want to hear other people, bring headphones. Don't whine and complain, because another human dead exists in your presence. Their comments are gross and rude, and they should be ashamed of themselves. If you have to fly back with baby, it can really help their tiny ears to pop. If you have something for them to drink or suck on, add to key off and landing. Close bracket. AITA, there was no reason you needed to fly. You simply wanted to, then you subjected the rest of the flight to your screaming child. If that's not asshole, IDK what is? The guy behind us must have heard, because he leaned forward and told me that it is generally considered rude or disrespectful to fly with a baby. I told him flying is a form of public transportation, and if he wants to control his surroundings he should have chosen a private jet. Extra asshole here. Why didn't you take a private jet? Same reasons he didn't, asshole. Bigotter. I feel sorry for the people you caused to suffer. You waited until your kid was 9 months to fly. I'm sure 9 more months cold gone past until you two flew. Or there's these amazing software called Skype or FaceTime or any type of video calling which you cold views to introduce your offspring to your family. Instead you subject the entire plane to suffering on the way there and way back, just so your family can throw a tea party for someone who won't even remember it or them. Also yes, you can control the child. Give her a bottle/breastfeed her or a dummy. Everyone had a right to be upset, especially as it's a long flight with a screaming child. Honestly, you should get better at keeping your child quiet. People had a right to be angry with you because you were being stuck up and thinking everyone should accommodate you. Little story, me and my fam went on a long flight when my brother was 2, and you know what? He never cried once on a plane. Because my parents were decent human beings who researched how to deal with a child on a plane. Of course he played with toys and iPad, so he made some sound, but by the end of my flight my parents later told me they were thanked for having such a well-behaved toddler. You people are insane sometimes. Yes, sometimes flights are required, but fuck's sake, a 9-month baby shouldn't be making a 24 to 30 hour trip to visit relatives. Those flights are awful to sit through and crazy expensive without a screaming baby next to you. Sure, since those people next to you sound awful too, but man, I'd despise you if I had to sit anywhere near you on a flight like that. Technically NTA, but I do feel for them. I'm really sensitive to loud noises, and the idea of being trapped on a plane with a crying baby next to me for an extended period would put me into a stress-induced panic attack. It is so painful to listen to. That being said though, you were making an effort to calm your baby and they should know that they can't avoid babies. Anytime you go out in public, you do so with the knowledge that they can't be avoided.